Hi friends, welcome to my first Digitakt and Digitone tutorial. This will be the start of a tutorial series on the Digitone and the Digitakt combo and using it for electronic music live jams. In this first video of the series, I want to talk you through my general setup and thoughts on how I use the Digi combo for electronic music and techno jams. The second video I have planned will cover the use of all tracks in more detail, and the third video planned will be about live performance techniques using this combo. So these are the videos planned right now for the series, and they will be out within the next weeks. I definitely want to do more Digitakt, Digitone tutorials in the future, so I would love to hear what you would like to see. So are there any specific things about this combo that you'd like to know? Are there some topics you'd like to dive deeper into? Your feedback is really highly appreciated and helps me to make my future videos interesting for you guys. So many thanks in advance for sharing your thoughts down in the comments. Now, if you're following my channel, you might know that I use the Digitone standalone a lot, and I still do that. But a couple of months back, I got the Digitakt, and I'm really enjoying this setup for live music jams much, because it adds a lot of new possibilities that I want to talk about in this video. To showcase this, I'm using my latest Digitone and Digitakt jam here on YouTube, which sounds like this. And the link to the full jam is also linked up here if you want to check it out. And you can also get the song on Bandcamp and soon on all other platforms too. Now let's start with the general setup and my thoughts why I set this up the way I did it. I don't want to dive too deep into how everything is connected via MIDI and audio and all of the settings, because Ivar Triti has an amazing tutorial here on YouTube on how to set these devices up to work together pretty well, and I set my devices up pretty much the same. So I've linked the video down in the video description, and it is definitely helpful if you're just starting with this combo and just want to connect both devices. So just very briefly on how I set this up and to give you an overview, the audio and MIDI is going out of the Digitakt and straight going into the Digitones MIDI ins and the Digitones audio ins, and the Digitakt is the master device, meaning that it is sending MIDI clock to the Digitone, pattern changes, and also can control the start-stop function. Like you can see, I hit play and the Digitone just reacts to that. And when I change patterns, you can see here, if I go, for example, to pattern 1, now it's here in pattern 1, 2, and back to pattern 2. Now it's here also in pattern 2. So to align them that they are always in the same pattern. And I also can mute the Digitone's tracks via the Digitone's, the Digitakt's global mute mode, which are these 4 tracks down here. You can see now they are all lighting up. But if, for example, I press these 2, they are now muted. And also these 2, now these are muted. And also, of course, I can mute all of them or just unmute them. That is pretty handy when I'm jamming live to have all the control over the mutes on one device, which is really nice. And how you set all of this up is in Ivar's video explained step by step. As I said, the link is in the description. Now, some might argue, why not also sequencing the Digitone via the Digitakt's MIDI tracks? There are good reasons to do this, like, for example, having the control over the music in one device and not spread across 2 devices, which definitely makes a lot of things easier. But I love to have the immediate control over the parameters and parameter pages for all the tracks on the Digitone separately, like you can see here. This way I can just control the filter, ADSR and LFOs of specific instruments on the Digitone and use the Digitakt mostly to mute all the tracks. And that is a huge plus for me when jamming live. And another thing that is really important for my general approach on the Digitone and the Digitakt, when I look at this combo and work with it, I don't try to see them as 2 different machines, but more as one big machine with 2 different sides. So on the left side, the Digitone is where all my melodic stuff happens, and on the right side, the Digitakt is where most of my percussive stuff happens. This really helps me to know exactly what is going on and where I need to reach to change certain things. And it also helps to better blend these two worlds together, that in the end it sounds more like one cohesive instrument which is making music. That is, by the way, also the reason I sample percussive sounds from the Digitone into the Digitakt and use them there. The kick, for example, I used in this kick drum here, you can see is actually a kick drum I created on the Digitone and then sampled into the Digitakt. To do that, I just switch these audio cables. I plug these into the inputs and this one into the outputs here, of course. And then I can just straight sample into this one here. And the cool thing about this is that it keeps my track structure. So I have all my percussive elements on the Digitakt and can still use sounds, the percussive sounds coming from the Digitone, because I have to say I really, really like the sounds of the percussive elements on the Digitone. So this way I can just sample them over here and then further process them and then just align them to the track structure that I have on both devices, which I'll get into more detail in the next video of this series. By the way, talking about structure, the general structure of the combo regarding projects, banks and patterns is the same that I used for my Digitone only jams and explained in more detail in this video linked somewhere up here. But yeah, just to give you a brief overview of the thoughts behind this structure, a project is for me a live set or a collection of jams. I, by the way, have the same project on both machines. Like you can see here, this one is called Tech Jams Digitakt and Digitone. And this one here on the Digitone is called the same. And these projects contain up to 8 tracks, which are my banks. So each bank is a jam or a track. Right now, you can see I'm in jam number 2 or track number 2. And each pattern of these banks or jams or songs, however you want to call them, is a different part of the jam, like an intro, a main part, a transition, or an outro. Like you can see here, this is the middle part of the jam. This is kind of like the intro on which I start. And this is the pattern where most of the energy is going on. And I also separate my patterns in top row and bottom row patterns, or as I call them here in the Digitone, black and white patterns. The top row patterns, which are these ones here, are my main patterns to jam with a kick drum playing, like for example, I already showed you this pattern here. And the bottom row patterns are transition patterns that have no kick drum in them, but a lot of fill tricks and a lot of effects going on. And with these, I can make smooth transitions going from one main pattern to another. So if I wanted to go from this pattern to this, I would go from here to here and then from here to here. Like I can show right now, let's say we are in the transition pattern, which sounds like this. And now I want to make a transition to this pattern here. I can already cue it up. And then using fill tricks, I can make the transition. And then we are in pattern B3. Another important thing for my workflow is that the intensity of the patterns increases from left to right, meaning in this case that the pattern B1 has the lowest intensity, B2 is kind of like medium, and B3 is the highest intensity. So you can hear that pretty good here. This one is a little bit settled. Here already there's a lot more going on. And this one definitely has the highest energy. You can really hear the offbeat hi-hat cutting through, and the ARP is playing a lot of more melodic elements, and this just adds to make this pattern way fuller in overall sound. And this way, when jamming live, I know exactly where to reach to expect a certain energy level. So when I went through the whole jam till pattern 3, all the time increasing the energy, I can then decide where I want to go from there. Do I want to fall off completely in terms of energy? Then I would go back to the first pattern. Or do I just want to decrease the energy a little bit? Then I would go to pattern 2. And I can also further adjust the energy by muting several tracks. For example, when I have pattern B3 playing with all the tracks turned on, and then switch to pattern B1 and additionally muting several tracks, the effect will be much stronger. So now pattern B3 is playing and we want to go to the lowest energy pattern, and now I make the transition and also mute the tracks. Yeah, and this way you can really bring the energy down, but still keep the beat going, which is of course very important. By the way, in my last 2 jams, I only used 5 patterns, 3 main patterns and 2 transition patterns, which for me is totally fine for a jam length somewhere between 6 and 8 minutes. But this leaves a lot of patterns per bank free. And I want to use this in the future to smoothly connect the different jams to form a whole live set. So I'll definitely need more jams with the combo to get this to work. But I think that is kind of like a good way, so that I can introduce the next jam coming up in these patterns and mix elements from both worlds together, and then smoothly switch to another jam, and this way extend the overall length to play kind of like a live set for half an hour or maybe even 1 hour. That would be the goal with this combo, but I'm not fully there yet. Now let's have a look at the effect settings I use on both machines for my jams. In general, I try to use the same settings on the Digitone and the Digitakt. This worked pretty well for my last jams and makes the sound coming from both machines more coherent. But I might change this in the future, as I experience especially the drum sounds on the Digitakt sometimes benefit from a shorter reverb decay time or different delay times. And this is something where I still try to find the best settings for my jams. But for now, let's start with the chorus. The chorus is kind of like a special effect, because you only have this effect on the Digitone and not on the Digitakt. I pretty much like the standard settings, so not too much going on here. I just set, like you can see here, a high pass filter, which is, I think it's 60. Yeah, it's at 60. This is just to keep the lows clean and don't have them affected by the chorus. And I also sent some delay to the chorus, like you can see here. This is something I changed from jam to jam, but in this one, for example, I felt there was it just felt really good to send some delay to the chorus, but no additional reverb, because it made the whole jam a little bit too muddy. And let's next look at the delay, which like I already said, it's pretty much the same on both devices. You can see here basically the same settings, just a little bit more reverb sent to the Digitone sounds. This one is at 50, this one is at 40. Yeah, this is just to have all the melodic sounds that are playing on the Digitone benefit a little bit more from the extra amount of reverb on the delay signal. I just like it way more here than on these percussive sounds, so I put a little bit more of the signal onto the Digitone sounds. Apart from that, it's pretty much the same. A high-pass filter to keep kind of like the low end clean. The time is set to dotted eighth notes. Ping-pong delay is turned on. And the feedback is between 60 and 70. In the transition patterns, however, the feedback is much higher. Like you can see here, when I change it, I need to play this one for sure, then it changes here as well. You can see here the feedback is at 85, and also the reverb on this one is much higher, and this is to get more energy into the transition going into the next main pattern. And also the feedback is something I change dynamically during the jams, using it kind of like as a performance tool, which I'll show you in the third video of this series in more detail when it comes to live performance techniques. Now let's move on to the reverb on both machines. You can see again pretty much the same settings on both devices. Short or no pre-delay, pretty long decay time with 85, and also again a high pass filter to don't have the lows affected by the reverb. On the Digitakt you have also two additional settings. You can choose whether to set the reverb to affect the sound pre or post compressor. I like the pre-compressor a little bit more to have the reverb signal being compressed as well, but that's of course just a matter of taste. And the volume of the reverb, like you can see here, is just set to standard to have both again fit together pretty well. Now to cover all the settings, let's quickly go through the compressor settings on the Digitakt over here. That is something where I think I haven't found the holy grail yet, so I tend to change these settings a lot, but for now these work pretty well for me. My general idea is to use parallel compression on the sounds coming from the Digitakt, and that basically has two reasons. The first one is that the Digitone doesn't have a compressor, and the sounds coming from the Digitone are not affected by this compressor here on the Digitakt, of course. So to not make both machines sound too different in terms of dynamic, I like to maintain some of the uncompressed signal coming from the Digitakt. And the second reason is that I like to use some performance techniques for transitions that need some dynamics to work. Like, for example, the delay feedback loop, which I'll show you in more detail in the third video of this series. And this doesn't work so well when the signal is fully compressed and the compressor is squashing all the volume changes. So yeah, I think you can hear it pretty good when I compare the dry and the wet signal on this one. Let's mute the Digitone's tracks, so that now we only have the Digitakt sounds playing. This is the fully compressed signal versus the dry signal. Compressed and dry. Let's set this one back. And yeah, I think you can hear pretty good that the signal, the full compressed signal gets more punch, but it also loses a lot of dynamics, which is problematic for my transitions. So that's why I mix the compressed with the uncompressed signal to have the best out of two worlds, which is great to have the option on the Digitakt via this mix control down here. And you can see right now the mix is set at 70. Which is slightly more of the compressed signal coming through, but this one works pretty well for me. And you can also see that I use a slightly stronger compression. I lower the threshold here to get more of the signal to be affected by the compressor, and I also use a ratio of 8:1, which definitely is one of the higher compressor ratios, but that's okay because I still got a lot of uncompressed signal coming through due to the parallel compression technique. And I'm also thinking about compressing the signal even more to have the effect to be much stronger in my future jams. But for this jam here, these settings work pretty fine. This, I think, needs just some more experimentation on this compressor settings. And yeah, apart from that, I only set a slightly slower attack to maintain some of the percussive punch. I pretty much left the release time as it is. And then, yeah, when everything is set, I used the makeup gain over here to adjust the volume to match the signal coming from the Digitone. And yeah, that's it for the compressor. And yeah, that wraps up the first video of this series, giving you a general overview of my setup. As I said, the next one will be about the track structure and what's going on each track. And I plan to release this video in about 2 weeks. And then the last video I have planned right now will cover some live performance techniques I like to use when actually jamming with this combo. And this one will hopefully be out also within the next couple of weeks. I just want to say thanks so much everyone for watching, and of course feel free to drop me a comment about what you'd like to see in this tutorial series regarding this combo. And till the next video, stay safe and creative. Bye.